Hello there and welcome everyone to this episode of BFG Reviews. As always, I want to start by sincerely saying thanks to anyone that's watched my previous videos and remind everyone to please like, share, and subscribe. Now, on to this week's review, which is...
Happy birthday to you. Wade Wilson? Who's asking?
Wade, you are special. This is your chance to be a hero among heroes.
Your little cinematic universe is about to change forever. I am soaking wet right now. Let's fucking go! Let's fucking go.
Deadpool and Wolverine, directed by Sean Levy and starring Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Emma Corrin as Cassandra Nova, and Matthew McFadden as Mr. Paradox. Deadpool and Wolverine is the third Deadpool movie and follows the titular Mr. Pool after he is taken by the Time Variance Authority and offered a place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But when he learns that the TVA plans on destroying his old universe and everyone in it, Deadpool recruits a reluctant Wolverine to save his universe from extinction. So, it's probably not a huge surprise, but yeah, I loved Deadpool and Wolverine. It's not especially deep, and the plot is somehow both bare bones and overly complex, but I had the best time watching this hilarious and action-packed movie. I had the biggest freaking grin from the beginning of the opening shots to the end of the post-credits scene. To anyone that was concerned or curious at how the film would address 2017's Logan, given that it was such a beautiful and fitting end to Jackman's Wolverine, let me tell you, they definitely address it and in the most Deadpool way possible. I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say we are given one more chance to say bye 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 to Logan, from Logan. The opening scene all around perfectly sets the tone for the rest of the film, letting the audience know that nothing will be taken too seriously and there'll be plenty of kick-ass action. And there is plenty of kick-ass action in Deadpool and Wolverine, most of which is just the two titular characters blasting, slashing, and stabbing each other. The fight scenes between our two leads are clearly the best choreographed and shot fight scenes in the film. It's when the action begins to involve more and more characters is it easier to see the cracks. The film does use a couple of filmmaking techniques, like implied action, to avoid showing some of the more crowded action shots, and to great effect, even adding to the comedy. But then it uses a couple techniques like shaky cam and quick cuts to not so great effect. But the not so great bits were few and far between. What isn't few or far between are the jokes. There are wall-to-wall jokes in this film, and I found myself laughing more often than not. And yes, much of the humor in this film is either meta or self-referential. The expected being owned by Disney jokes are plentiful. You could even argue there's maybe too much meta comedy, but there still is a fair share of jokes that came purely from the characters and their interactions. There are also a decent number of visual gags and what would be considered physical, if albeit violent, comedy. At its core, Deadpool and Wolverine is a comedy movie, and as long as you found the first two Deadpool films funny, you'll definitely find this one funny. And unlike some, I don't think the humor is the only thing that drives this film. Even though there isn't much of a plot, that doesn't mean there isn't any story. Between all the visceral and violent action and the juvenile jokes, there's an actual story with a message about what it means to be a hero and finding meaning in simply being with the ones you love. And the heart of this story are the two titular leads, especially when it comes to the one wearing the red. Deadpool is the most complete Deadpool we've seen on the big screen. He's still the same wisecracking, violent lunatic with a healing factor that physically can't seem to shut up and breaks both skulls and the fourth wall.
Fourth wall break inside a fourth wall break. That's like 16 walls.
That we saw in the first two films. But in this film, Wade is actively trying to be a hero, even if he isn't the best at it. Not only is this a more accurate reflection of the comic Deadpool, but it is also a logical continuation of Deadpool's journey from the first two films. In Deadpool 1, Wade spends the film seeking revenge on the guy that tortured him, leaving a trail of bodies along the way. And by the end of the film, he gets that revenge, even killing Francis in the middle of Colossus's speech.
Everything else falls away. The way the world sees us. The way we... Why?
And in Deadpool 2, Wade only tries being a hero after the love of his life, Vanessa, is killed and he can't seem to find a way to unalive himself and join her. And even then, he's still reluctant. But in Deadpool and Wolverine, Deadpool not only wants to be a hero, but at the start of the film, Wade believes he can only find meaning in being a hero. Then throughout the film, he learns that being a hero shouldn't come from his need, but others' needs for a hero, while also learning he can find meaning even if he isn't a hero at all. And I think this really worked as a character arc for Wade. Unlike in the first two films, Wade in Deadpool and Wolverine clearly admires many of the heroes in the MCU, in particular Thor and Cap. This admiration again reflects the Deadpool from the comics and adds to his need to be seen as a hero. But it's only when he drops this need does he actually become more like those heroes he admires. And then there's Logan. While not as developed as the Merc with a mouth, Wolverine still gets plenty of focus in this film. Slight spoiler, but the Logan in this film isn't the Logan from Logan, or the Logan from any other of the Fox X-Men films. And Logan's journey in this film doesn't come from learning what it means to be a hero, but accepting that he is worthy to be a hero.
Trust me, kid, I'm no hero.
And like Wade, still worthy as a person, even if he's not a hero. It's a pretty classic arc for Wolverine, and it especially works in this film after learning about what happened on this Wolverine's Earth and why. And given what happened, we get a much gruffer, violent, and cynical Wolverine, setting it apart from Jackman's previous portrayals. Plus, it's just so awesome to finally see Hugh Jackman in the classic yellow and blue. And the fact that the suit had actual relevance to this Wolverine story only made seeing it that much better. Apart from the titular heroes, not many of the other characters really get much in terms of development. The villain Cassandra Nova is decently menacing, threatening, and somewhat charming, and is given some motivation and backstory, but it's all pretty standard supervillain stuff. And then there's the cameo gang that all share mostly the same motivation. Again, nothing crazy deep, but I think it serves the purpose for this film. I will say there were a couple of plot points surrounding Cassandra and the TVA that didn't quite make sense to me and end up being more unnecessarily complicating than anything else. But regardless of how much focus, screen time, or motivation they got, the entire cast gave their all, with Reynolds being the obvious standout. Ryan Reynolds once again proves he is perfect for the role of Deadpool, bringing both a playful depravity and genuine tenderness to this Deadpool as well as a couple others. And while it might not be as layered as in Logan, Hugh Jackman's performance goes above and beyond what is needed for this role, bringing a bitter sadness and savagery to the forefront of his portrayal. And as I said earlier, the villain Nova comes across as aggressively sinister, dangerous, yet calm, with much of that coming from Cornyn's portrayal, who perfectly adopts the unassuming but extremely powerful persona. Now, none of these performances will be winning any Oscars anytime soon, but you can tell everyone was putting in effort and having a blast doing it. So even when the references and Easter eggs go over your head or the humor comes a bit too meta, you still enjoy those moments because you can feel how much fun it was to make this movie. And I think the cameos do nothing but add to that feeling. While I agree there are some recent films that have definitely relied too much on cameos or bringing back long gone characters, in my opinion, Deadpool and Wolverine crafts a story that reframes the cameos and character revivals in a way that makes sense and ends up being a touching send-off to many of these characters, as well as the Fox Marvel universe as a whole. Now that brings us to the question posed in the thumbnail. Is Deadpool and Wolverine content slop? First we need to answer another question. What exactly is content slop? While everyone's definition of what constitutes slop will be different, I think most agree that content slop is usually at least one of these two things. Number one, content created to be consumed peripherally. Or number two, content developed not to tell a new or interesting story or an old story in a new and interesting way, but simply to please the executives' beliefs of what they think people will like. Think of films like Red Notice, Ghosted, and A Family Affair, whose entire premise is getting together whatever movie stars or influencers are popular at the time and putting them in the most generic films possible. To illustrate this complexity, let's start by looking at whose intention matters most, the creatives or executives. Can a creative's passion for a project supersede an executive's indifference? To help answer these questions, I want to look at a pair of somewhat similar pieces of media. Both are animated films that came out in 2023 and follow a protagonist that goes against what they believe to be an unjust institution that controls people's lives in the name of safety. Both films celebrate decades-old characters, feature plenty of references and Easter eggs, and came from two of the largest remaining studios, Disney and Sony. I, of course, am talking about Across the Spider-Verse and Wish. First off, I want to say I very much enjoyed both of these films, but if you spent any time online, it's easy to see how one was praised for being the next step in animation and storytelling, while the other was bashed mercilessly for being unimaginative and poorly constructed. Both films were pushed through the same uncaring studio system led by apathetic executives whose only concern is to watch their bank accounts grow. So, why was Spider-Verse hailed as a masterpiece and Wish seen as nothing more than corporate slop? To me, most of Wish's references and Easter eggs to other Disney films didn't add anything and at times even distracted from the film itself. Whereas Spider-Verse used most of its references and cameos to help tell the story, enhancing certain character motivations and the film as a whole. Because of this, more people were able to feel the creative's passion and intention to make art over the executive's intention to only make money. So after all that, the question remains, what exactly is content slop? The technical definition of slop is a product that has little to no value. But as the saying goes, beauty or value is in the eyes of the viewer. So the question now becomes, do I consider Deadpool and Wolverine content slop? Probably, but it doesn't matter. Yes, the film heavily relies on comic book references, cameos, and reviving supposedly dead characters. But there's also a story under all that with a message that I think most people can relate to. And it's clear that people are relating to said story and loving this movie in general. So even if everyone agrees that Deadpool and Wolverine is content slop, who cares? I say enjoy the slop. Life is short. If you enjoy a certain movie, show, or piece of media that no one else seems to, great. Watch it again and again and again and find new things to enjoy with every viewing. Because in the end, whether it is content slop or not, to me, Deadpool and Wolverine is one of the best comic book movies ever made.
And I don't mean it metaphorically or rhetorically or poetically or theoretically.
Not since Infinity War and Endgame has a superhero film felt so much like an event comic in a fully realized universe. And that's why I not only enjoy the cameos and references, but also think they are appropriate and, like Spider-Verse, actually enhance the story being told. Even with the unnecessary plot holes and contrivances, Deadpool and Wolverine is a fun, R-rated action comedy that has a relatable message at its core, delivers a satisfying conclusion to the Fox Marvel films, and I believe will be at least in the discussion as one of the best comic book films, and easily earns an A letter grade. So, those are my thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine. Let me know your thoughts on the film, and if you consider it content slop or not, in the comment section down below, as well as your thoughts on my art, or what other films you'd like me to review. Thanks everyone, make sure you hit that like button, and I hope you have a meta day.